topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, and of course, it's a wonderful morning because I get to be with you. So there has been a question in the past recent years because a lot of recent college graduates are not getting a job. So is there another route? What other options are there for our youth? And how can they have different careers? And that's exactly what we will be talking about today. Welcome, Terry.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on.
Yes, no, fantastic to have you on the show. So usually we start out with a moment in your early childhood or in your early youth. Do you recall a moment or a person that left a positive mark on you?
Oh boy. Besides family members, because my dad and my mom and of course my uncles were very influential. I grew up as a child of a single parent. But I think playing ball, a lot of my coaches were mentors to me, and some of my teachers in high school were mentors to me. So there's numerous ones, but Frank Anderson was an AP calculus and physics teacher. He was a mentor to me, and Dave Kenson and Jim Kane, two of my coaches in high school.
And what is one of the things that you learned from them and are still carrying?
Well, I learned how a lot of character-based things that came from my family and my mentors, and that character prevails all. And how you act and how you conduct yourself actually supersedes the talents that you have, however great they are. Because as you walk out the door, your talents will be forgotten about, but your character will be remembered.
Very true. So as we talk about character, and what would you say are some of the important values that you still hold true today?
Well, first and foremost, the two character components, I think, that I've always in raising our children and even our grandchildren is honesty and integrity are the top two facets of any persona, I think. But hard work and diligence and perseverance are also, a tertiary or secondary character. But honesty and integrity are my top two.
Yeah, no, definitely. And when we talk about hard work and diligence, so there are a lot of youngsters right now who have put in a lot of hard work, a lot of diligence in their college work. They're graduating, and sometimes they're putting in hard work even in the jobs. And there have been a lot of layoffs, and the career is no longer a certainty in American culture. Like there used to be, okay, I'm talking about several decades back. You go in, you join a company, you walk out, you have a pension, and your life is set. But now it is either the careers get outdated or companies lay off people or that career is gone. So amidst all of these, tell us you champion manufacturing. So tell us your journey and also a little bit about that.
Well, I was very fortunate in that this year we're celebrating a 100-year legacy in manufacturing, and I'm at the end of my 45th year of being in the manufacturing sector. But I think what's happening is over the years, and I think our educational system the costs have risen so tremendously that they've outpaced the salaries that they offer in the general career set. But generally speaking, manufacturing has got a huge void because our culture has somehow can't come up with this perception that manufacturing is not done in the U.S. anymore, and that it's outdated and it's not technologically savvy, and all these perceptions that are incorrect. And as a result, there's I call it return on education, where your time frame and cost to develop a skill set, if it matches your natural abilities and inclinations, the time frame and cost of getting into a manufacturing skill-based career is so much quicker, so much less costly, and so much more financially rewarding in comparative terms.
Mm. So let's say someone, a youngster in high school, they're deciding whether to go to college or whether to go into like manufacturing, as you're talking about,
Mhm.
and they still want a bright future. They don't want to be capped at a certain level of compensation. So
Mhm.
how can they go about? And what are any resources that you can recommend?
Well, first of all, Divya, there's not a lot of awareness of manufacturing careers, so that's first. So a lot of times with young people, they're not even aware of what they might be able to pursue. They know that mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and most of the family and friends are telling them, go down the 4 to 5 year college path. And some
Mm-hmm.
of them want to go into student debt just because they have to, which I say don't do.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can just make them aware of the manufacturing sector and how it's been neglected in terms of a talent pool for so long, and do the research, do internships during high school. A lot of young people are making the transition from internships in a manufacturing company into having them pay for their education and their upskilling as they grow within the company. But I think you have to, as a young person, we go back to those character-based items, integrity and honesty. I tell young people, arrive early, leave late, and tell the truth, and you'll be successful in no matter what you do. And so if they just knew about manufacturing, do their research, get into an internship, and whether you have the money or not, even if you have the money, give it a look, and I think you'll be surprised. And then when you get into supply and demand, just the basic concept, there's a huge demand in manufacturing and a short supply, which is now raising the bar, not only in the skill set you need, but what they'll pay you as a result.
Mm. And what are some of the industrial sectors that they can look for?
Manufacturing is so broad-based, and not only is it broad-based, Divya, but also there's more conventional career sets that they also need. They need
Mm-hmm.
accountants, they need legal representation, they need salespeople, they need HR executives, and thusly. So I think aerospace is big in this country, defense is big in this country. General manufacturing, entrepreneurship is a huge element in manufacturing. The young people probably have no idea that young people go into manufacturing, and then next thing you know, they either develop their own product and make it, or start their own company and then start their own manufacturing subcontract machine shop or what have you. There's food manufacturing, there's pharmaceutical manufacturing. I mean, it goes, chip manufacturing is making not a comeback, but they're starting to realize the importance of making chips in this country, microchips. So there's so many, and it's such a broad definition, and there's so many other career sets that are embedded as well in manufacturing companies.
Mm. So what you shared is very powerful. That okay, here you are, You're learning how to manufacture. You're learning inside out, what are the issues? What are the problems? You're learning that core competencies and skill sets. So of course, now if you decide to open up your own company, you just don't have that external knowledge, you have internal knowledge.
Mhm.
So that said, you were talking about the chips and all that.
Mhm.
So tell us more about, is there a parallel with gamers into digital CNC manufacturing? So first of all, tell our audience what is digital CNC manufacturing and draw the parallel.
Okay, well, in manufacturing today, there's first of all, a lot of automation. We have to be automated in our processes to be competitive globally. And many things, if not, I'm not going to say everything, but a large double-digit percentage is digital based, is computerized. And so that being said, there's also a concept called the digital twin, which Siemens is a big advocate of, which means that you can actually replicate a process in the digital world and then understand potential failures, potential improvements that can be made in a digital world before you implement it in a physical world. So when I wrote my second book, I didn't realize I have three children, three adult children, and my youngest child, who's no longer young, is a gamer. And I didn't realize in our world we have over 3 billion gamers, and that's
How many did you say?
3 billion in the
3
world.
billion. Wow.
Yeah. So a large percentage of the population are gamers. And so what I try to advocate, and I talked to Barbara Humpton at Siemens about this, is that there's a connection between the prevalence for young people in gaming with the digital world, the computerized world, the automated world of manufacturing. But if you don't know about it, you can't see that parallel.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. So basically what you're saying is that you can take a gamer skills and move into the digital manufacturing.
Yes, and it has to be. I mean, there has to be your own interest and passion, and your own skill set intuitively has to match. But people aren't making a decision about manufacturing because they know about it and because they don't want it, and they've made that determination. They either don't know about it or their perceptions about manufacturing are so outdated that they kind of write it off. And I'm here to say that there's a void, and once again, supply and demand, take advantage of that, and you'll be competing with less of a populace for a job. Instead of having thousands of candidates, there may be dozens or hundreds of candidates, and as a result, you'll stand out, and if you show passion for it, you'll definitely get a shot for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you have mentioned that, your family has a history in manufacturing. Tell us about that.
Well, my grandfather was the one in 1925, so we're 100 years out now, and he started with a machine tool builder in Chicago. His father, my great-grandfather, came from Norway, and he passed fairly young. So my grandfather had to go to work at a very young age, and literally, figuratively and literally started sweeping the floors for a machine tool builder. And that started down our path down the manufacturing route. And then my two uncles and my father followed. And much as I thought I didn't want to work for the family, for my father particularly, because his standards were unbelievably high, I gave it a shot, and that was 45 years ago.
So tell us about your manufacturing journey.
Well, my manufacturing journey, I was very good in physics and math, science and math. And initially, I didn't think I was going to go that path. So I considered photography, I considered psychology, I considered a lot of different things. And then I realized, the competitive pool, the opportunities. And I'm like, if I'm really talented at something and I have an opportunity within the family, I'd be silly and irresponsible not to at least try to pursue it or consider it. So I started with my uncle at a machine shop in Milwaukee initially as a teenager. I think I was 19 and then maybe even 20 working, actually 18 and 19, working summers for him. And then soon after my wife and I got married, I worked for him for about probably just a little bit less than a year. And then my dad called me and said, would you consider, working for the family business for me? And as I alluded to a minute ago or a second ago, I almost told him no immediately. And then I really thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, that's not fair to my wife. I should really talk to her and get her take on it. And I, out of respect for my dad, but even my grandfather, I should really possibly give it a shot and think about it. So, I gave it a shot and started in Wisconsin, calling on machine shops and manufacturers for 5 years, moved down to Illinois, started doing the same there, moving into management and sales manager, vice president, president, and then owner. And that was a 45-year journey.
Mm. So you worked your way up. It wasn't that like, okay, this is my father's company and I'm just going to step into the role.
Very well put. Very well put. My family and myself, none of us and nobody thinks that they want to be that young person or younger person with that silver spoon. At least I never did. And so my dad, when I started running the company, my dad had cancer surgery when I was 26. And so he basically said, all right, you're going to have to start running the company. And I was ill prepared even 5 years in to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to give me a title. And I said, I don't want the title. And he goes, well, what do you mean? You're going to be running the company? And I go, I'm the son of the boss. You are the son of the boss. And you should know that in itself is not necessarily a badge of honor. It can work against you more than it can work for you. And until people get to know you and see your work ethic and that you're leading by example. And so it probably wasn't for another 10 years that I even decided to take on a managerial title.
Mm. And that definitely speaks of your character, that integrity that you initially talked about. Because so many times what happens is people will say, oh, that's nepotism. And so many times people who rise up from the family, they're even called nepo babies.
Yeah.
And as you said, that goes more against you, like because there are more things stacked against you rather than in your favor, because it's not easy to get the trust of other people.
No, that's well said. And there's nothing wrong with nepotism in itself, but it's up to you and it's within your character how you accept the nepotism and that opportunity. And you need to leave your mark, and I think I did. In fact, I know I did. And you need to take the opportunity that's been given to you and make the best of it. But being self-aware, a lot of people don't understand that being self-aware of how people perceive you and the character or the image that you portray, many times that's as important as anything that you stand for.
Mm-hmm. So in your journey, as you rose in the ranks, what are some of the lessons that you can share with our audience?
One of my favorite lessons was one of my mentors, besides my father, who's passed, is another individual who's since passed, and his name was John Comparini. And I really had a tough time with making decisions and wondering, did I make the right decision? Because I was working for my dad, and once again, he had extremely high standards. So I second guessed myself early in, sixth, seventh, and eighth year, moving into a decision-making scenario. And one thing he told me, Terry, I never made a decision that I always think things out very well that I thought at the time was the incorrect decision or a bad decision. What you need to understand is that circumstances change and you need to revisit it. But if you do your homework and you really, look things seriously through and through and make a decision, at the time it was the right decision. But things do change, after the fact and forward, and you need to revisit those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I'm hearing is that no decision Well, some decisions have to be final because, things have been implemented. You can't do anything about it.
Yep.
But that said, you can revisit those decisions and adapt to the changing circumstances. So, in your course of experience, have you developed any frameworks for decision making?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Divya. One thing I learned as a young person is that people always came to me to make decisions, and my dad taught me this as well. But then I honed it. Is that people want you to make decisions, and they don't give you all the facts that you need. So you have to more times often than not, rather than giving an immediate decision, you have to turn things back and say, well, I need 5 more data sets, or I need 5 more questions answered, and then I can give you a decision. And young people, or people that are new to the managerial profession or position, don't realize that, and then they make decisions, but they don't have all the facts. So rushing to a decision is not necessarily always prudent or good advice, but there's the opposite, and never making a decision or waiting to make a important decision too long is also the case. So you need to develop a mindset and a cadence, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that you know what you need as far as information and data sets, and then once you know that, then make a decision accordingly.
So basically, have all your facts, assumptions, and data. So this way, you're making an informed decision rather than making decision out of emotions. Or so basically, you're going for the fact-based decision. And when we talk about the fact-based decision making, now from there, what happens is, the way our human brains are designed, people make decisions emotionally and then justify it logically. So have you experienced those moments where your emotions took over your logic and made those decisions, and then either regretted them or thought like, oh, I wish I had made a different decision?
Yeah, no, that's very well said. Many times what I'll do, I guess this is one reason that I got into writing, because writing was very therapeutic for me. And my dad wrote a lot, but I think it wasn't therapeutic for him. It's just he had a tough time in communicating with especially his kids face to face. And so a lot of times I would write things down, and then I would look at things, and I would read them objectively, almost from a third person standpoint, and then see, with email, this is very, very prevalent and very good advice, in that write an email, but do not address it. In other words, don't put the email address in the top quite yet. And then, because a lot of times, you can say things and you can recover and counteract something you've said when you're speaking or having conversation, or in a debate, so to speak. But when you write things, too late. It's already on paper. It's already in an email. So, if you're emotional and you're writing something and you're upset or excited or whatever, write it out, but don't put the email address in until or put your own email address in until it sounds the way you want it to be. And it's not emotional, and it's based on the facts and what's prudent and business and compassionate, all wrapped into one.
Absolutely. Now, when we are talking about decision making, you're talking about taking that pause, and also that ownership, that accountability piece comes in. Okay, I made that decision and I'm going to own it.
Yep.
So what are some of the ways that leaders can hold themselves accountable as well as hold others accountable while still maintaining that trust and not breaking that thin thread of relationship? Because if you're a manager or leader and now you're trying to hold somebody accountable, especially the way we have moved into the softness and the communication piece, how can they maintain that?
Well, first of all, boy, you're going really deep here, and it's very provocative to get my brain going this morning. But first of all, in our culture right now, what has happened is that young people, by their parents, aren't as held accountable as maybe when you grew up or I grew up.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily a good thing. Accountability, I've been an athlete my whole life and had coaches, and you're accountable when you step out on the field. And that accountability is extremely visually apparent, right? You
Right.
dropped the ball, whatever, you struck out, whatever. And so that being said, I think early in a relationship in a company, it's important to express that and witness accountability first and foremost from either a person's upbringing or a person's previous experience, and say, look, I don't know what happened as you grew up, and I don't know what happened at your previous company, your previous job, but accountability is very, and transparency is very important here at, fill in company name, right?
Mhm.
But a manager or owner has to be accountable and demonstrate that. And that means you have to sometimes say you're sorry. That means sometimes you have to say, I think I made the wrong decision and I need to really revisit this, and be compassionate about the fact that, you're not fallible. You're not prone to not making mistakes. You can make a mistake. Hopefully there's fewer than most, but the transparency and accountability are huge facets in gaining trust in any relationship.
So 3 points stand out for me, that it's about building a culture of setting expectations, that when you come in any company, as you mentioned, XYZ, that, okay, you are joining that. And listen, I'm accountable as much as you're accountable. And also having that culture where the leaders are willing to say sorry and at the same time allowing the space to fail. Because if we don't allow people to fail, then it builds that element of fear, and which is not good for the company, because there's studies after studies that have shown that happy employees equal directly to the company's profits. So those 3 points are very, very strong, Terry.
Yeah, I think the failure component, as a young person, I always heard that, and I think fear of failure came into play for me because I didn't want to fail, even though I know it was okay to fail. And once again, athletically, you learn that playing ball, no matter what the sport is, your failure is clearly apparent.
Hmm.
But as you get older and as you experience, it's if a culture is built where you almost expect or allow people to fail on a small basis, and then you build upon that, I think what you'll find is that people embrace that component and learn from the small failures, so that when they get to the potential of big failures, they're used to preparing emotionally, mentally, and otherwise for avoiding the failure, because they know what it takes to avoid the failure in the small scenarios.
Absolutely. So you have mentioned about that you have built a nonprofit, and share with us, how does it work? And if you have any success stories that will guide our audience, because people learn from others and their paths.
Yeah, but around 2012, I took a deep dive into technical education. I was in the manufacturing sector, but there was a huge need for changing perceptions in manufacturing. So I developed a 501c3 called CHAMPIONNow. Champion is actually an acronym. It's the longest acronym probably you'll ever hear, but it's Change How American Manufacturing is Perceived in Our Nation.
Mm.
And so that's the wherewithal and the vision behind the organization. But that led me to writing a couple books to encourage people to look at manufacturing. The first book also had mentoring and parenting included. And then the second book had a relationship between the student and the parent, and how they need to be open, have open dialogue about career paths. But then, and then ultimately, I ended up developing a camp for middle school students to learn about manufacturing using high school students as mentors. So we're back to that mentoring component again.
Oh, that's fantastic. And any success stories from there, like what paths they have taken?
Well, I've seen a lot of people that I've mentored and a lot of people that have where I've gone and spoken at events and whatnot, and people that have read the book. But generally speaking, just to give you I put some framework on data points, data sets. Young people that come in, there's usually out of every 100 young people for, let's say, the camp, maybe 7 or 8 even know the word manufacturing or have any connotation of what does that mean. I mean, that's how we're talking middle schoolers on the camps. And then by the end, there's probably 47 to 50 of the 100 that are really fascinated about, what is this thing called manufacturing and how do I get into this? And this is really cool and interesting and fascinating. And so that's a success story every time we run a camp, just seeing that transition. I did speak at a technical college a number of years ago, and there was some moms and dads in the audience and some their student, their child. And one mom came up to me and said, and she was crying. She had a tear coming down her cheek. And I'm like, oh boy, I said something wrong. And I said, I'm sorry, but why are you crying? I mean, what did I say that made you cry? I'm sorry. And she goes, no, you don't be sorry. You actually, I thought I failed my son. I thought I failed my child in that I can't send him to college. I can't afford college. And you just told me that there's hope. And that, I said, well, your son appears to be healthy and attentive, and he's here at this event, and you brought him here. So I think you've done your job. I think it's up to him from here on out. And I said, but there is hope. And by bringing him here to listen about manufacturing, maybe that's the solution. But the last one I'll say is there's a young man who I interviewed in my second book, and he went to a high school that had a great manufacturing program, but never understood that it was there. And it wasn't until after high school that he decided to take a job in manufacturing. And in 9 years' time, he went from entering the door knowing nothing about manufacturing to becoming the plant manager in 9 years. And so that speaks volumes into how, if people, have diligence, have perseverance, have a good work ethic, tell the truth, show up every day, how there's advancement opportunities, but you just got to show you're willing to do any job they give you and ask questions. And as a result, you'll be rewarded.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful story. And I have seen personally in my career, people going to technical colleges, joining biopharmaceutical manufacturing, and rising to plant managers, being directors. Because if you think about Lean Six Sigma, being trained on Lean Six Sigma, one of the key principles of that is that if you're a supervisor, and especially in the manufacturing area, it comes from the Toyota way, then you need to know what every one of your employees is doing. So as you're rising in the ranks, where is that problem? Is it really something we can solve? And then that also makes the connection that so many times doesn't happen, where leadership is thinking one way, like, oh no, we need to do that. And the managers or employees may be thinking this is not feasible. So this is such a powerful way to keep moving up. So do share with us, what are your 2 books about and how can people connect with you?
Well, as far as connecting with me, at CHAMPIONNow.org, if you email me, it's terry@CHAMPIONNow.org. And so that's the easiest way to communicate with me. The first book is Finding America's Greatest Champion. And this book is written for students, parents, educators, and industry members. And the subtitle is Building Prosperity Through Manufacturing, Mentoring, and the Awesome Responsibility of Parenting. So if I wrote the first book, if I wrote a book just about manufacturing, I didn't feel it would have the draw for people that didn't know about manufacturing or didn't want to know about manufacturing or had a misperception about it. And so by bringing mentoring and parenting into it, I feel that was a value add, for other parts of the audience. The second book is called Inspiring Champions in Advanced Manufacturing. The subtitle is Discover the Path to a Debt-Free Career. And this is a two-sided book where the artwork and the storyline, there's a student edition on one side, and then there's a parent edition on the other. And so the manuscript is 180 degrees to each other. And so as a young person, I was undiagnosed, but I had ADHD. So it was really hard for me to get through a book from start to finish, still is. And so I encourage people to, to look at the table of contents and try to find something that they can latch onto, that they can identify or find interest in, and then start from there. And then, like I do many times, go from different points so that you're reading something that speaks to you. And by having different people in both books that are not always just manufacturers, or maybe they're not in manufacturing at all, there's a lot of life lessons and character-based information that can help no matter what.
Well, sounds like both books would be super helpful to people who may be in career or people who are deciding where to go. So thank you, Terry, for all the work you're doing, because you are infusing them with curiosity and openness in looking at, hey, there could be an alternative pathway. And it's important that we breed that curiosity and continue to flare it, so that once we keep on giving it the wins, then that fire can take on. And as we are talking about, manufacturing is coming back to our nation, and just kind of continue building upon it. So thank you. And we hope that you continue doing the work and helping other people.
Divya, thank you for the honor to be on today and give me an opportunity to share my passion with your audience. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And wonderful audience, I want to wish you happy holidays, because this is the time to be with your loved ones, taking that pause and reset. And I'm going to challenge you, not only just do the reset, but do the recalibration. Because yes, the goals are paused. Yes, there are no pressures that are apparent, but they're waiting in the wings. So do the recalibration. And of course, we will be bringing you more learnings, more frameworks, more strategies, more heartfelt lessons that you can apply in your life and be successful, because you deserve to be successful. You deserve to be happy. And I want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for being part of our audience. We love having you with Beyond Confidence family, wishing you a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. And I want to thank our wonderful tech genius, Juan. Thank you again for making this show possible. Be well, take care, and enjoy your time with your loved ones.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who've experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.